What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Shifting Gears Podcast. I am your host, Justin LaRoque. I am the marketing manager here at Spectrum Automotive Holdings, and this podcast is presented by Spectrum Automotive Holdings. If you are new, please take a moment first and foremost to make sure you are following us over on our social media platforms. If you're listening to this over on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. We do really appreciate that. Also, if you're new, if you're not familiar with what we talk about here, this is all about the automotive industry. We talk everything about F&I best practices to women in automotive, discussions on dealer equity programs and reinsurance, and even careers in automotive, and so much more. And so one thing I always like to clarify is that I am in no way the expert when it comes to some of the automotive side of things, as I am more into marketing. So, but that's why I like to bring on the experts that can kind of share and discuss some of these topics that we have. So really excited for today's guest because this is a little bit of a different angle of some of the things that we've talked about in the past. While it may not all tie in necessarily directly to automotive, it certainly is relatable in many, many ways. So today we're talking about recruitment in today's world, and we are with Mike Negast, who is the corporate recruiter here at Spectrum Automotive Holdings. So let me bring him in. Mike, how you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to kind of share some information with you guys and kind of talk about my expertise in the recruitment field, and really glad that you guys decided to bring me on.
Yeah, absolutely. We're glad to have you here. And like I was saying before, obviously recruitment ties into all businesses, and people are always looking, especially during this past year and a half and how challenging things have been and for all industries, and certainly the automotive industry can attest to that. So I'm very curious to kind of get your take on some of what you've witnessed here in the past year and a half, kind of where things have gone and where things are right now in today's world. Yep. So before we get into the details of that, I do want to ask you to just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how long you've been in the recruitment space for.
Sure. Yeah, great. Well, again, my name is Mike Negast. I have been living in North Jersey my whole life, born and raised. As far as my career goes, I have an undergrad degree in human resource management from Western Connecticut State University. I've been recruiting and doing talent acquisition for almost 11 years. I've worked in a couple different industries, healthcare predominantly, but I've also done corporate sector as well. And when this opportunity popped up, I thought it was something that I can really kind of take and run with. And recruiting for all levels of automotive professionals, from sales folk to marketing team to IT, really helped diversify my skill set. But I've been in the recruitment world for 11 years. I've also done operations management for about 5 years. So I feel like with my diverse skill set, partnered with what Spectrum has to offer, we have a great value add for candidates looking to join the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds like you definitely have come from a strong background in some of the work that you've done. Obviously, we've talked before. Mm-hmm. And so I'm excited to kind of dive into some of these, and I have some questions here for you. Yeah. So let's start it off with, how the past 18 months have impacted this current recruitment efforts. How's that been?
Yeah, I think the best way to, articulate and break that down is, kind of in three parts. When COVID hit, would be kind of like your part one. Then kind of the vaccine rollout would be kind of your part two. And then, chip shortages in the automotive industry would kind of be your part three. So, breaking that down into part one, when COVID hit, we saw, massive layoffs, in the auto industry, both at the manufacturing level, as well as the dealership side. A lot of people that I'm speaking with, they have a last date of employment of March 2020, February 2020, June 2020. So that's all, this industry was impacted tremendously, by the pandemic. So a lot of people were out of work. A lot of people were kind of on the sidelines, looking for work that just wasn't available at the time, based on, dealerships having to run lean, manufacturing companies having to run lean. So that was kind of like your part one, over the last 18 months, and then kind of your part two, as we saw the shift, with vaccine rollouts and people getting vaccinated and more of a return to work type status. Dealerships started to hire a little bit more. Manufacturing companies started to hire more. Agencies started to hire a little bit more again on their sales force. So, we saw kind of a shift from a lot of candidates kind of being on the sidelines to, a lot of these candidates now being able to be selective in terms of the jobs that they're looking for. So, whereas, it literally went from, no jobs being available to an abundance or a surplus of positions being available. So, that was kind of a shift, as we got into, the beginning of 2021, through the early summer. And now what we're seeing with the chip shortage is kind of reverting back to, dealerships again, potentially starting to run lean, if the volume of business, isn't there. So that's kind of where, where we are now, kind of in like this limbo stage where, we had a lot of people on the sidelines, then we kind of had to rush back to work, candidates being selective, and now we're kind of at this limbo stage, kind of to see what's next, in the market space here. Right,
absolutely, yeah. It's crazy to I mean, and affecting all industries. It's been a crazy past year and a half. Mm-hmm. What are some of the experienced high-level automotive sales and management candidates that you're speaking to saying about returning to work in their next job venture?
Absolutely. So a lot of the high-level salespeople, managerial level candidates that I'm speaking with in the automotive industry, they're really looking for going back to a sense of normalcy. Especially the ones that travel a lot and commute a lot for work, whether they're traveling coast to coast, traveling interstate. Obviously with the pandemic, that was a huge. There was a huge gap for them in terms of being able to do that. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the people that I'm speaking with, in those types of positions are really looking to get back to that sense of normalcy, and a lot of them have, in the past few months, businesses kind of, got back to a little bit of a normal phase again with vaccine rollouts and people returning to work. But again, high-level sales manager may have had a team of maybe 10 that they were managing at a regional level, and now maybe that team was, because of COVID was reduced. So, getting back to a sense of normalcy is the biggest thing that when I speak to candidates that they're looking for. Mm-hmm. A sense of growth and team camaraderie is something that I think they've been missing, since the pandemic, and something that they're looking to get back into. And again, opportunity. Whatever company is coming out of this on the stronger end is going to be one that is going to have a lot of opportunities available for some of these candidates. So what we're seeing is a lot of high-level candidates that maybe have gotten a severance type package or something like that, maybe for 12 months or 18 months, and now are readily on the market, because they had to be let go during COVID, but now they're readily available. So there's an abundance of really high quality, high-profile industry professionals that companies can potentially capitalize on if a spot were to open up for them. So,
sure.
So that's a lot about what I'm hearing from them is more of a return to normalcy. But also I think they feel that there's going to be some open opportunities for them that they may not have even considered pre-pandemic
sure.
or pre-COVID. So.
Yeah, no, I could see that different opportunities really starting to open up. What are some of the things that those in position of dealerships and agency leadership mm-hmm.
can
do to help attract candidates to their organization?
Sure. One of the biggest things, I was just on a call, called The Great Resignation, and it was a webinar, a WebEx call that, kind of highlighted, that in this market space overall, auto industry and a lot of other industries, to be frank, mm-hmm. Again, the candidates right now have the ability to be very selective. In terms of where they want to go and what company they want to work for and things of that nature. So one of the things that the call highlighted was what dealerships, what agency leaderships can do, what companies can do in general to attract candidates is number one, highlight your benefits, your total benefits package, not just health and medical, but maybe any retirement options, stock options, promotion to well-being, rewards and recognition programs, things like that maybe can make your company or your dealership stand out from the three down the street, right? Sure. So say certain markets, big metropolitan areas, there's a lot of competition out there to attract high level people. If you're in a position of leadership or ownership or partnership, what can you do to attract these candidates? And one of the biggest things that candidates are saying is, what is your total benefits package, right? Outside of total compensation, which we know is always going to be important. One of the biggest drivers is, what are your benefits look like? If I come to you, Am I going to have to pay out of pocket? Or what percentage of out of pocket am I going to have to pay for benefits? Am I going to have to pay at all? What does your retirement plan look like? Am I offered stock options? What is your what well-being initiatives do you have? It's something very that candidates are talking about. With still being in this COVID environment. Do you have well-being initiatives? What are you going to do if I get sick? What does your return to work program look like? Being able to have all those things readily available is extremely important.
Yeah.
Those would be some of the biggest things that I would say. One of the other things that you could do as a dealership leader is try to put yourself in your workforce's shoes, right, or your employee's shoes. So whether it's an agency or a manufacturer or a dealership or again whatever type of company that you may be running, what necessarily what you feel is going to work for the masses, may or may not actually be the case. And try to take a step back and put yourself in maybe one of your employees' shoes and say, hey, if I'm in this scenario, what does this look like for me? Or if I'm in this scenario, what does that look like for me? I think a lot of times leaders take either advice from others, or they're outsourcing a lot of this types of stuff, and they just look at the paper and they say, okay, this looks good for my workforce, let's roll it out. But maybe putting themselves in their workforce's shoes and say, what is this going to look like when we roll it out, from a process standpoint, from a benefit standpoint, from a compensation standpoint? Are we giving our employees the best that's out there? And if we're not, we need to take a look at that and say, if I was an employee, if I wasn't the owner, if I wasn't the general manager, if I wasn't the executive, right, or would this work for me? And I think that's something that if done correctly and rolled out effectively, really can help attract and retain employees in this especially in this market space, when people are leaving companies to jump ship faster than any other time in workforce history, and it's something that I think needs to be strongly considered by all leaders of companies.
Sure. Yeah, and I think you make great points there, and especially like the idea of, like you said, really going out of your way to highlight some of the benefits that you have here, other than just your general or your basics, from what people almost already expect. And as you're saying, like a lot of companies have similar packages when it comes to some of those main benefits, but what other details do you have that might stand out, compared to others? So great points. What are some of the biggest post-COVID initiative dealerships should be taking when it comes to recruiting and hiring?
Yeah, whoever's going to be involved in your process, you want to do a couple things. You want to articulate very clearly what your employer value proposition is for the people that you're trying to attract. And that could be, anything from what are our values, what are our goals, being able to clearly identify those goals and clearly identify a strategy for those goals. Because as a candidate, coming into your store or your company, either from a competitor or from another industry, what is your employer value add proposition to me? What are you going to be able to add, that's going to attract me to come here? Also promoting job security and growth. During an interview or during a conversation, tell me, about the growth of the company. Tell me about where you were, 5 years ago and where you are now, and where you plan to go, especially with the pandemic and, the recession. People don't want to necessarily hear that, we're not doing too well, or, this isn't the best time for us, right? So being transparent, is key, but also being able to highlight growth that you may have had. That's extremely important. And being able to, again, articulate what is your competitive advantage, what is your differentiator in the market space, like what can you offer that your competitors can't, so that when I come join your organization, we can take that advantage and make it tenfold, right? So being able to sit down with somebody and discuss that with them is very important. And again, like I mentioned, goal setting, and strategizing to achieve those goals is really going to help, recruitment and hiring, when you're attracting those candidates. But I think the most important thing, like I mentioned, is what is your employer value add proposition? What value are you adding to me for joining your organization, and being able to articulate that?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to kind of view that and ask yourself those questions to really put yourself it's very similar to what you had just said earlier with with the leaders of companies really putting themselves in the shoes of these candidates as well, getting a clear understanding of what they're looking for.
Yeah, and I think in this market space, and I think what a lot of candidates are looking for, is a little bit of, to be honest with you, is empathy, and but being able, like you just mentioned and what I mentioned before, putting yourself in somebody's shoes is and being, people aren't necessarily always looking for the shiny new toy in terms of a new position, right? Sure. It's what from a 360 approach am I going to get out of this organization? Again, comp is great, benefits we talked about are very important, but what value, number one, am I bringing to the organization by coming there, and number two, what value am I getting out of taking this position? Am I going to grow in this role? Am I going to be a promotable talent in this company? Or is this a company that maybe doesn't value those things? So being able to do that and articulate that to candidates is going to help you attract, again, a lot of good ones that have been sitting on the sidelines and are kind of ready to get back to work.
Totally, absolutely. And I was curious, something else I wanted to ask you here was, how can virtual recruitment assist in attracting candidates? What are some of the pros and cons of virtual recruitment?
Sure. So especially in this industry, automotive industry, whether you work on an agency or you work in a manufacturer, you work in a dealership, everybody's extremely busy, and a lot of people have meetings on top of meetings on top of meetings when you're in a leadership position or a position to interview, right? So being able to do things virtually on the fly via a mobile device, via a laptop, whether we're doing virtual interviews, we're doing phone screens, we're doing virtual assessments, virtual onboarding. There's a lot of easy access items that one can do while they're in the airport, while they're driving, while they're maybe in a rental car, while they're waiting for the next meeting to start. Use the technology that is available to you, really to number one, get as many candidates through the life cycle process as possible. But number two, it will help you time manage and help you, be able to, get what you need to get accomplished, on the recruitment and hiring side, while also, being able to get your work done. So you could say, hey, I met virtually with this great looking candidate, I'm going to pass them your way, and I think some that we want to speak with or that we want to get in the door. So when there's a lot of moving parts and especially in a dealership or especially for any high-level sales positions, maybe for your agency, being able to, do a virtual interview, meet the candidate, where they are virtually, there's just a lot more time in the day to do it than actually doing it, face-to-face, at least initially. I think at the, when you get to that last stage, you want to do a face-to-face. I think that's still very important. Yeah. But to get the ball rolling and not to miss out on a good candidate and to keep them engaged, a virtual interview, virtual platform, is extremely important. And then that's really on the hiring manager side. Then on the recruiter side, some of the things that we can do, is there's a lot of AI, artificial intelligence platforms out there, that will help you with text recruitment. Studies have shown that candidates are more likely to respond via text within 12 seconds, but they may not respond to an email until either the end of the day or that week. So having some type of AI text platform, is something that is kind of the wave of the future, and will help you get a lot more touches, in terms of candidates that are going to, and your response rate will be a lot higher from a recruitment standpoint. So, those are some important things. You have to remember that these candidates now, could have a lot of opportunities, at their fingertips, and timing is everything. Which company is getting back to them the quickest, which ones are being the most upfront and transparent, and which ones are able to carve out the necessary time, and again, virtual platforms can really help companies do that. And the ones that have a good grasp and wrangle on that are the ones that I think are going to set themselves up for success, in the future.
Sure. Yeah, and I feel like these are things that really should have even been happening before the pandemic, right? In terms of efficiency and reach, that you're talking about, especially with like the text technology and stuff like that.
And sales guys and gals have been doing this for a while, right? Yeah. They've been working on their laptops. They've been traveling around the country, doing some of this stuff. But the push for the actual virtual interviews and the text platform AI, those are things that have kind of been around, like lingering in the weeds, so to speak. But with the pandemic and everyone working from home for so long, really it's pushed to the forefront. And now, what we're seeing is, candidates are now like, well, wait, this is what I'm used to now. This is what I now want. This is what I now need. And as an organization, to attract some of them, we have to be able to meet them in a certain way. So,
makes sense. You got to make that adapt. You have to adapt.
Yeah, I think adaptation is key. In this market space,
sure.
and virtual platforms can help with that tremendously.
I could see that. So, Mike, what are some tech-savvy initiatives a recruiter can bring to their organization to help them stay one step ahead of competition?
Right. So, in my year here, working in the auto industry, this is a very relationship-based business, and it's very cyclical. And people know people, and being able to not just reach out to somebody who may be on the market space, but being able to keep that relationship and build off of that is extremely important, right, in this industry. So, an applicant tracking system is extremely important, and what that is it's a software database that basically houses candidates that you've come in contact with. Okay. So anyone within the organization can go into the system and say, hey, I saw that candidate applied. I know that person. I recall meeting them a couple of years ago, at a dealership or at a convention, or I remember that name. Who do they work for again? It's like, oh well, this person is on the market. And even if we may not have something for that person, right now, we can keep a conversation and dialogue going with them. Wow. For 3, 6, 9 months. I've even done a year out with people, that I've been trying to retain into certain positions, right? So. Sure. I think having a system where we can easily access them will help with that. If you don't have that, then you're really just running off of resumes or Excel spreadsheets, and it's not the most effective way, to view to view candidates that are that maybe have expressed interest in coming to your organization in the past. But this way they can stay there. It's a place that we can house them, and they'll never leave the system unless we manually take them out. Something else that is a great tool from a tech standpoint is a pre-employment assessment. There's a lot out there that companies can use. We see this mostly on the sales side, in terms of, does this person's assessment of their self, translate or correlate to success in this position. And again, there's a lot of assessment platforms out there that candidates can take. What we advise and recommend is, whatever you roll out for your organization in terms of when that assessment is done, it should be the same for every position. And it should be done at the same point in the life cycle. So, it really helps take the bias and out of the recruitment and onboarding piece. This person's assessing themselves. Do they meet the criteria that we feel is important for this position? They could have interviewed great. They could have told us everything that they want to hear, but potentially when they take this assessment, were they just telling us something that we wanted to hear, or is this actually, based on what they identified, on their assessment as somebody who can succeed in the role? Right. So those are a couple things, from a tech standpoint. Yeah. We talked about virtual interview recruiting. We talked about AI. There's a lot of platforms out there, whether you use Zoom or Microsoft Teams, or there's a ton out there, that people can kind of use at their fingertips.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So I want to ask you, how can internal recruitment help your business?
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Internal recruitment is extremely important for both, for small, mid-sized and large companies. The reason that it is so important is because, the recruiter and the talent acquisition is really the first phase of someone's relationship with the organization. If you're outsourcing to an outside agency, or if you're having your hiring managers do recruitment, the candidate's not going to get that kind of white glove feel, going through an agency. The agency's only looking to get the person hired. so that they can make money.
Sure.
That's what they're in business for, right?
Yeah.
They may know about the company, they can give them a brief overview and a synopsis, but at the end of the day, they care that that person gets hired for their bottom line. They don't necessarily care that person gets hired and succeeds for your organization. And then from a hiring manager standpoint, it's such a time saver for them by having an internal recruitment department. Imagine yourself being a hiring manager, everything that you have to go, do in your day to day, but then you have to sit there and post jobs and source candidates and look at resumes and spend time on calls. Having an internal, recruitment department allows you the ability to, have someone do the legwork for you and, be presented with, candidates A, B, C, and D, and say, hey, look, these are the people that we've identified that we think will be a good fit for this role, these are people that you probably want to take a look at. We go as far as coordinating your schedule for you. We'll send interview confirmations out for you. So literally all you have to do is sit there, whether it's on the virtual interview or in person, and then make a decision. Really, that's really your part as a hiring manager in that. And then obviously, we can collaborate as much as possible or go back and forth on, which candidate we want to present an offer to. So, I think having an internal talent acquisition, department and having a recruitment team, is extremely important to the growth of your organization, both from a 360 approach and a white glove approach to candidate experience, all the way through, making your hiring manager's life easier. And all the way to being, ultimately a cost saver. A lot of, I think agencies are great. They definitely serve a purpose for some positions, 100%. But again, at the end of the day, there's a cost that comes with utilizing them.
Sure.
So being able to identify that in-house and can really help your organization grow, and really can help your organization stand out amongst maybe some of your competitors that aren't doing it in the market space.
Right. And to add on to that, how can an internal recruiter help companies anticipate long-term and short-term hiring needs for their organization?
Sure. So, the recruitment team, talent acquisition, should be a part of, any the headcount planning or department planning that you may have upcoming, whether it's accounting or manufacturing or sales. Having an idea of the headcount that is to come, and what are our hiring goals for the next year, for the next quarter. Having that done internally and being able to that gives the recruitment team a heads up and say, hey, we're looking to bring on, we're growing, we're acquiring new organizations. We're going to need 3 more people in the accounting department. We're going to need a couple regional salespeople to facilitate this growth. Giving it's all about time to hire and being able to reduce the amount of time that you get a person onboarded, trained up, and out to do the job. That is what is most important, and that's where an internal recruiter really can help you.
Yeah.
Again, alleviating the pressure off of the hiring manager, but also being able to work with that hiring manager and saying, okay, what are your goals for your department? What can we help with? What is the goal for our dealership? How many technicians do we think we need this year? Or this quarter? How many finance people do you think that we need? How many? What? And then really identifying what is the current status of our workforce? Are we going to be having any turnover? Or are there people that are doing well? Or are there people that aren't working out? And the recruiter can identify that and do a confidential search for you as well. So there's a lot of long-term and short-term planning that a recruiter should be involved with, specifically with department growth and growth of the organization as a whole.
Wow, that's a lot of great points that you make here, Mike. Hopefully for those listening right now, no matter what space you're in terms of, especially with the automotive industry, I know a lot of the things that you had mentioned tie in very closely to what some of the dealer partners and colleagues that we have and work with, it can certainly apply to their world in many different ways. So I think this is excellent. I think you provide a lot of great information here on this. Ultimately, before we wrap up, is there any last minute thoughts or anything else that you want to share before we kind of close out here today?
No, I think we covered a lot. Definitely a lot of information there. My biggest thing for me is, in being here, I'm a resource for the organization. If anybody has any questions or anybody that's watching, ever wants to reach out, they can find me on LinkedIn. Mike Negast on LinkedIn. Got a lot of followers. Being a recruiter, it's one of those things where you meet a lot of different people.
Sure.
I'm happy to be a resource. I do have a good amount of knowledge. Again, I've been doing this for about 11 years, and any questions anybody has or anything that they want to follow up with after this, I'd be happy to listen to and happy to help.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, Mike, again, thank you so much for your time, and this information is great. So hopefully people listening here can pull something from it of their own and apply to their own situations that they're in, whether they're on the recruiting side or if they're even searching on that side. It can certainly be helpful either way. So again, thank you so much for your time and being on the show. Hopefully we'll have you back on again at some point.
Great, Justin. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right.
And there you have it, folks. Once again, another great podcast in the books. Thanks so much to Mike Negast. If you guys are not following him, as he's mentioned, he's over on LinkedIn. So make sure you go over there and connect with him. I put his information in the description below. And hopefully this was helpful to anybody, again, in the automotive space that can, I think a lot of the things that he mentioned certainly apply in a lot of different ways to a lot of different departments within the automotive structure or dealership structure. So would love to hear your thoughts. Please take a moment, leave a comment in the comment section below. If you're looking to reach out to me, I'm over on LinkedIn as well, Justin LaRoque. I'll put the information in the description below as well. And make sure you're following us over on our social platforms. We're over on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and even YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed there. And thanks so much for taking the time to listen. And until next time, we will talk to you on the next episode.